And behind me, as you can see, we have several veterans and students holding flags. We have a really nice ceremony prepared for you guys. And so I thank you very much for your time for coming. Of course, the classes will change here at about 2:05 from 6th period to 7th. So if you need to go back to class to check in, that is fine. We'll take a short break and then we'll start back as soon as the classes have resumed and taken roll, and Miss Lynn Dunn, Miss Dunn, sends out another announcement. So with that said, we'll go ahead and get started for just about that. Three more volunteers. Do I have three more? Oh, advance? Okay. All right, come on down. Just need three. We got Sophia and the others. All right, so once we have all the flags up, get everybody set. So just need three. Just three. Thank you. You got it. All set. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. So again, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today to honor, understand, and learn from our local veterans who have served and continue to serve and defend our country. In honor of Veterans Day, November 11th, I've invited these local veterans to come discuss with you their role in the United States military, highlight their service, as well as explain in their words why Veterans Day is important and what it means to them. Some of you may have even seen the video that I sent out earlier this week. Additionally, before class change, as you see behind me, the veterans will discuss and demonstrate the history of our American flag. And after the class change, we will conduct and explain the United States flag folding ceremony. I'm honored to have these veterans join us today, as well as some of our guests who also are serving as we speak, and grateful for their service to our country. Before we begin, I would appreciate your attention, so please turn off and put away your cell phones and give these gentlemen the respect they deserve. Thank you again for your time, and please welcome the following veterans and compatriots listed in alphabetical order on your program, along with a short biography of their service. So hopefully you got a piece of paper that highlights some of the veterans. So if you want to reference that, I'm just going to highlight who they are right now, and they can stand or raise their hand to indicate who they are. First up, Captain Patrick Kelly, United States Navy and former Thomas Jefferson Chapter President of the Virginia Society of the Sons of the American Revolution.
Raise your hand, got that too.
There you go, there you go, sure. Stand up, there we go, there we go. Second up, in alphabetical order, my father, Colonel James Thomas O'Kelly Jr., United States Marine Corps and former Thomas Jefferson Chapter President of the Virginia Society of the Sons of the American Revolution. Next, Chief Warrant Officer Chad Saylor, United States Coast Guard and Coordinator of Communications here in Greene County Public Schools. Colonel Ken Wallenborn and Doctor, United States Air Force and Sons of the American Revolution compatriot. Staff Sergeant Joel Warren, United States Army and retired military police officer and a former colleague of mine and teacher here at William Monroe. And Dr. Phil Williams, former Thomas Jefferson Chapter President of the Virginia Society of the Sons of the American Revolution, professor, historian, and author. So with that, I'll let them begin the history of the American flag ceremony. Thank you.
Here you go, Jeff. Okay, who can tell me what the first flag was that flew in American colonies? First flag, did I hear somebody say the British flag? Oh, well done. Congratulations. Here's the first flag. The British flag or Union flag flew in the colonies from the founding of Jamestown until April 1775, when the first battles of the Revolutionary War took place at Lexington and Concord. After that, a new flag was needed for the American colonies. George Washington is said to have designed this first American flag, known as the Grand Union flag, or Continental colors. And the next flag, this is the flag that had the Union in the canton, because that was still our heritage. But notice that 13 red and white stripes were added, representing what? 13 colonies. This flag was raised when Washington first took command of the Continental Army. While it was never officially approved by Congress, it was in use for 2 years, from 1775 to 1777. In addition to the continental colors, there were many other flags also in use during this period, and let's look at a couple of the more symbolic flags. So we'll begin with the Gadsden flag. Has anyone seen this flag?
Yes.
Where?
Mercedes.
License plate. Exactly. It is an official Virginia license plate. Notice the coiled rattlesnake, the very important symbol of the American Revolutionary War period. The rattlesnake uses its rattle to warn people to leave it alone, but if you step on it, it will strike. That was very symbolic of the colonies, which warned the British that they were stepping on our liberties, which would cause us to defend our rights by striking back. Notice the 13 rattles, which represented the 13 colonies with the wording, "Don't tread on me." The next flag is the Culpeper Minuteman flag. Another flag that used the coiled rattlesnake symbol with the "Don't tread on me" wording was the Culpeper Minuteman flag. The Culpeper Minutemen were formed in Virginia in July of 1775, shortly after Patrick Henry's famous "Give me liberty or give me death" speech. So liberty or death became the motto of the Culpeper Minutemen, who carried this flag in the Battle of Great Bridge in December of 1775. The next flag is the Liberty Tree flag. Another important symbol during the Revolutionary War was the Liberty Tree, which was a famous tree in Boston that was planted very soon after the city's founding, and that by 1775 had stood nearly 130 years. This tree of liberty was where colonists opposed to the British would meet. The British found out about it, and what do you think they did? The British cut the tree down. How did that make the people feel? Mad? Sad? And this is why the Liberty Tree became a very significant symbol of the patriot cause during the American Revolution. In addition to these flags, there were many others around during this time. So Congress decided there needed to be a standard flag that would be used by everyone. So they passed the first Flag Act on June 14th, 1777. That's why June 14th is known as Flag Day. So what did the Flag Act say? Listen very carefully. The flag of the United States should be made of 13 red and white stripes, with 13 white stars in a blue background. That was it. So if I gave you those directions to each of you and asked you to go off separately and design our first flag, do you think everyone would come back with the same flag? No. Exactly. So that's exactly what happened. We still ended up with a lot of different flags. The next flag to show is the Betsy Ross flag. This one should look very familiar. Anyone know what it is? This is the flag that traditionally has been considered by many as the first flag. The stars are arranged in a circle representing the union of the colonies. According to legend, George Washington showed Betsy Ross the design with 6 pointed stars, and she suggested a design with 5 pointed stars because they were easier to make. The next flag is the Hopkinson's flag. Many give this flag credit for being the first official flag. It certainly looks similar to the flag in use today. This flag gets its name from Francis Hopkinson, who was a signer of the Declaration of Independence and a congressman. Hopkinson claimed to have designed the first official flag and billed Congress for it. One difference on this flag is that the stars have 6 points. The next flag is the Bennington flag. What about this one? What is different in this flag? Yes. The arrangement of the stars is definitely different. The number 76 is added to symbolize the date of the Declaration of Independence. The stars have 7 points, and the stripes are reversed. This flag was actually the very first flag flown in the Battle of the Revolutionary War at the Battle of Bennington in Vermont. So as you can see, the original Flag Act in June of 1777, designed to create a standard flag, did not have the best results. So what do you think Congress did? They passed the new Flag Act in 1794 when the war was over and George Washington was president. That act called for 15 stripes and 15 stars. Why 15 stripes and stars? Yeah, because 2 new states had been added, Vermont and Kentucky. So the next flag we're going to look at is the Star-Spangled Banner. This was the only U.S. flag to ever have 15 stripes, but it lasted for a long time. In fact, it was the flag of our first 5 presidents who were founding fathers of our country. The flag got its name because it was the flag that flew during the War of 1812 in Baltimore, where Francis Scott Key wrote our national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner, during the British attack on Fort McHenry there. You can see the actual flag today at the Smithsonian Museum of American History in Washington, D.C. The next flag is the Great Star Flag. So finally in 1818, after about 25 years, Congress decided that a new flag was needed and passed a new Flag Act. By that time, there were 20 states, and they decided it did not make sense to continue adding stripes for each new state. So they decided at that time to add a new star for each new state. And the star would be added to the flag on the 4th of July each year. The Great Star Flag flew over the U.S. Capitol for less than 1 year as the 21st state was admitted by the end of 1818. And that is how we got the flag that we have today. As we keep adding stars for new states, the last Flag Act was in 1959, almost 60 years ago, which decided the final design of the flag we have today when we added Alaska and Hawaii. And I think that concludes the flag ceremony, does it not, sir?
Okay, thank you guys, all the volunteers, thank you so much. I hope you learned a little something about the history of our American flags. How many of y'all even knew we had that many flags leading up to the flag that you see flying in front of our school? Good, good to know. Excellent. How many of y'all have at least seen one of the flags that was up there besides the one we normally see? Fantastic, good to know. Really good to know. Well, thank you guys for all your help. So at this time, what I'd like to do is introduce our 2 local veterans. So if you look on your program, we're going to jump down to Chief Warrant Officer Chad Saylor. He represents the Coast Guard and serves as your coordinator of communication here in Greene County. And then, hopefully, pending time before the class change, I'd like to also introduce Staff Sergeant Joel Warren. He's Army retired and was a former colleague of mine and teacher here at One Monroe. So we'll go ahead and start with Mr. Saylor.
Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Awesome, man. Okay, well, before I tell you a little bit about myself, I just want to wish a happy birthday to the United States Marine Corps. By way of background, I'm retired Chief Warrant Officer Chad Saylor, and I served from 1999 to 2019. To give you an idea of some of the units and locations I served in, started off in New Jersey at boot camp, but my first unit was in the state of Virginia, down in Matthews, if anybody knows where Matthews, Virginia is. I also served in New Orleans, Elizabeth City, North Carolina, Honolulu, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. And my specialty within the Coast Guard was public affairs, and the role that I had for that job was to tell the Coast Guard story. And so now as my role at Greene County Public Schools as the communications coordinator, I help tell the story for our schools. And now I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Coast Guard as a service. So we're one of 6 armed services, and the Coast Guard is part of the Department of Homeland Security, unlike the other branches that are in the Department of Defense. And we have many roles, including law enforcement. We serve as a regulatory agency. We're a first responder, similar to like a 911 on the water. And we're a multi-mission force. So we work in the areas of ports and waterway security, drug interdiction, aids to navigation, search and rescue, living marine resources, marine safety, defense readiness, migrant interdiction, ICE operations, and law enforcement. The Coast Guard is responsible for 95,000 miles of coastline around the United States, and also out into an area we call the exclusive economic zone. And that's just an area that's past our borders, so we can make sure we're stopping drugs and other bad things from entering the United States. There are over 50,000 members of the Coast Guard, and that includes active duty, reserve, civilian, and auxiliaries, which is a volunteer component. A little bit about some of the toys we get to play with. We have 259 cutters, which are boats that are 65 feet or larger, 1,600 boats, 200 aircraft. Geographically, the Coast Guard is separated into two areas, an Atlantic and a Pacific area. Within those areas, there's 9 districts and 37 sectors. And our headquarters is in Elizabeth City. St. Elizabeth, which is in Washington, D.C. Some facts about the Coast Guard. On an average day, we conduct 42 search and rescue cases and save 12 lives, seize 1,253 pounds of cocaine and 172 pounds of marijuana. We facilitate the movement of over $15 billion worth of goods through the maritime transportation system. So we have the holidays coming up, and all those gifts that we get during the holidays, they have to come from somewhere, right? So we make sure that those gifts and all those goods that come to the United States come to the United States safely. A little bit of history here. So who wants to guess how old the United States Coast Guard is?
160 years.
Very? I heard another one. What was that?
Older than 10 years.
Older than 10 years. 232 years.
So I was right. Older than 10 years.
Okay. And who knows who Alexander Hamilton was? If you've seen Hamilton or heard the soundtrack, So Alexander Hamilton, aside from being a founding father and the first Secretary of Transportation, the first Secretary of the Treasury, rather, he also requested the creation of the Revenue Marine on August 4th, 1790. So that was a system of 10 cutters, and the original purpose of the Revenue Marine was to collect customs duties, also known as taxes, at our seaports. The modern-day Coast Guard was formed in 1915 when the Revenue Cutter Service merged with the United States Life Saving Service. And the Coast Guard has served in every U.S. war since 1790, from the quasi-war with France to the global war on terrorism. Just to leave you with a few facts to take away if you've forgotten everything I've said prior to this. The Coast Guard's motto is Semper Paratus, which is Latin for always ready. Our core values are honor, respect, and devotion to duty. We have one Medal of Honor recipient. His name was Douglas Monroe, who died at the age of 22 while using his boat to shield Marines from Japanese fire during World War II in the Solomon Islands. Our current Commandant, who is the leader of the service, is Admiral Linda Fagan. She is the Commandant and the first woman to lead any branch of the Armed Services. Some famous Coast Guardsmen. One is Alex Haley. Does anybody know who Alex Haley is? He's the author of the book Roots. Okay, we have one person, good. Anybody know of the Bridges family of actors? Bo, Jeff, and Lloyd Bridges? Any Big Lebowski fans in the room? Okay. Here's another interesting fact. During World War II, Walt Disney actually drew a Donald Duck logo to promote enlistment and boost morale. And the Coast Guard has a movie, kind of, sort of. The 2006 movie called The Guardian, which is a movie with Ashton Kutcher and Kevin Costner that is about our rescue swimmer program. And that is all I have to tell you about the United States Coast Guard, and I appreciate your time today, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, next up, we'll have Staff Sergeant Joel Warren.
Good afternoon. I'm Staff Sergeant Joel Warren. I served in the United States Army. Most of this is ancient history for y'all because I went in 1966 and got out in late 86. I served 4 years on active duty in the Army. During that period, I served a tour in Vietnam with the mechanized infantry up on the DMZ, and it was quite interesting. I came back to the United States, got into the National Guard. I went into an artillery unit. I served 8 years as a section chief on a 155 howitzer, which is not the ones like you see today because they can move around pretty quick. The ones we had, we towed them around with trucks, so it was a little different. After spending 8 years with the artillery and my ears ringing, I can still hear the school bell ringing right now, but even though it's not. I decided to go into the military police. So I transferred over to a military police unit in Chesapeake. To regress with the artillery, we not only did things with the artillery as going out and working on the bases and firing artillery and everything. During the winter season, when the snows and stuff got heavy down in the Norfolk region, we used our heavy duty trucks to go out in advance of fire trucks so that they could actually get to the locations they needed to because of the heavy snow. We also participated in some other different events and stuff around the town there in Norfolk at that time. Upon going into the military police, I worked with them for quite a while. We did other operations. Years ago, there was a couple people that escaped from the prison here in Virginia, and we came back from summer camp, pulled into the base there, and then got back on the trucks and went back out to perform search parties looking for these escaped prisoners at that time. The military police, we did a lot of different things within the community to help support the different organizations and everything there. I enjoyed my time with the military. If I wasn't already over the goat, I'd go back in. But they've got some young people that are doing the job now. We've got a few that I heard today are going in, going into the Army. Thank you. And everything. So after that, I came back here, got involved with the school. I enjoyed my 7 years that I had here at school doing different things. Great opportunities here at school. Take advantage of each and every one of them if you can. Try everything. That's the one thing I learned in going through a lot of things. Try everything, because the very thing that you say, nah, I don't want to do, might be the very thing that really leads you into a passionate career in the future. Thank you.
So real quick, I just want to ask one thing. We have about 5 minutes, I think, till class change, give or take. So actually, Staff Sergeant Warren. What do we do here locally in Greene County to honor Veterans Day? Just so these guys know kind of what's going on tomorrow, because tomorrow is officially Veterans Day. So just so you all understand what will be taking place in and around your own area, if you'd like to speak to that real quick, that'd be great. Thank you.
Tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock, Veterans Day is 11, the 11th month, 11th hour of the 11th day. Out at the American Legion Post out on 230, they will be doing a Veterans Day ceremony out there. We always try to recognize a local person. This year we'll be presenting a flag to a local widow whose husband passed away here recently. It'll be a great ceremony there. She's going to go, it's been moved inside out to the American Legion Post due to the upcoming weather tomorrow. So if you plan on going, get there about 10:30 or so you make sure you get inside and get a good seat. It's always a very moving and great experience to honor the veterans here in the county. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My name's Ken Waldenborn. I'm a retired physician. I've had a lot of experience through the years, and my wife says I talk too much, so if you fear that I'm going too long, wave your hats or stomp your feet. I started off my military career in the Virginia State Guard, which was organized after the Virginia National Guard went to war and landed at D-Day. I was a military bugler. I learned 37 bugle calls. We didn't have walkie-talkies, so we used bugles to call everybody. 37 bugle calls, good Lord. Okay, then eventually I went to college, got in the med school, then I went in the Air Force, and there I became a rated flight surgeon. That means I'm on flying status. I get to fly, and I always wanted to fly. I took care of the aviators, and I got to fly in the co-pilot position in B-47s, KC-97s, C-436, C-47s, and built up a lot of hours. When I got out, I continued to fly, and I owned airplanes with other people, and I flew for about almost 3,000 hours in private planes. And I was, once again, a rated pilot on instruments. In the Air Force, I had some exciting experiences, particularly down in the Bermuda Triangle. Any of y'all ever heard of that? Well, it's still not satisfied, but I have written and given talks on the Bermuda Triangle, but I had 3 episodes in B-47s. B-47 was a 6-engine bomber. The wings flapped through an arc of 21 feet. When he looked out there, he said, oh my goodness, is that what's making us go? But at any rate, I was in the Strategic Air Command, and that's when we won the last war, the Cold War. The Air Force was what did it, LeMay. I mean, the supporting services, of course, obviously they were so good, but the real tip was when Russia realized they weren't going to survive. They weren't going to have a country. We had so many atomic bombs and hydrogen bombs that we could drop on them. And that was part of my job, to ride in the planes that we were, some of them that we had the weapons in. I have 3 great-grandfathers who fought in the Revolutionary War. One of them signed the Mecklenburg and the Declaration of Independence. Anybody know when that was? 1775. It was before the regular was signed. It was signed down in North Carolina. And that's one of my great-great-grandfathers signed that. Later, another one signed the Articles of Confederation for the first Constitution we had. It wasn't very good, and they replaced it with a much better Constitution, which we now have. And so anyway, I'm walking with a limp because I was injured skiing. Not in the road service. But at any rate, my life has been wonderful. I've taken operator on probably some of you kids out there because I operate in Charlottesville at both hospitals there.
Thank you all for your time. At this point, sixth period will transition to seventh. Those of y'all that can stay, feel free to stay, and thank you for your time. Folding ceremony and discuss the importance of each fold. From there, I'll introduce each of the veterans and they'll each speak a few words about their service and what Veterans Day means to them. So with that, I'd appreciate again you please turn off your cell phones and put them away and give these gentlemen the respect they deserve. And for those of y'all still coming in, go ahead and file on up into the back and you're fine. Thank you. So thank you again and for your time, and please welcome the following veterans and compatriots listed in alphabetical order on your program if you did get a program upon entry. So first, I'll introduce Captain Patrick Kelly, United States Navy and former Thomas Jefferson Chapter President of the Virginia Society of the Sons of the American Revolution. Then we have Colonel James Thomas O'Kelly Jr. He's also my father, United States Marine Corps and former Thomas Jefferson Chapter President of the Virginia Society of the Sons of the American Revolution. Come on in, guys. Come on in. File all the way in the back. We've gone ahead and gotten started. Go ahead. Go ahead. We'll just pause 1 second, make sure everybody's in. There we go. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. All right, so you guys go ahead and file in the back. I was just introducing our veterans. So Captain Patrick Kelly behind me, United States Navy. My father, Colonel James Kelly, United States Marine Corps, if you guys want to raise your hands. Chief Warrant Officer Chad Saylor, United States Coast Guard and Coordinator of Communications here in Greene County Public Schools. Colonel Ken Wallenborn, United States Air Force and Sons of the American Revolution compatriot. Staff Sergeant Joel Warren, United States Army and retired military police, as well as my colleague and former teacher here. And Dr. Phil Williams, former Thomas Jefferson Chapter President of the Virginia Society of the Sons of the American Revolution, professor, historian, and author. So at this time, I will introduce my father and Captain Kelly to come down to start the flag folding ceremony for you guys. Thank you.
Before we start the formal program, what we're going to do is the traditional folds of the flag. Where this comes in is usually in a funeral. And if you've had any parents, grandparents, or any friends who've died, and you've gone to a military ceremony, this is very, very important to us. And the folding of the flag, each fold has a special meaning. And if you listen to Dr. Williams when he's doing the narration here in a minute, and you can watch what we're doing as we fold it. The ceremony's been around for a long, long time, and it's very solemn. So hopefully you'll enjoy it, and you'll learn a little bit about folding the flag, and next time you see something on TV or something like that, you'll understand what the importance of it and what the meaning is behind it. Thank you.
The flag folding ceremony represents the same religious principles on which our country was originally founded. The portion of the flag denoting honor is the canton of blue, containing the stars representing the states of our veterans serving in uniform. The canton field of blue dresses from left to right and is inverted when draped as a pall on a casket of a veteran who has served our country in uniform. Start.
Can everyone see?
Yeah, so this is the first folding. The first fold of our flag is a symbol of life. The second fold is a symbol of our belief in eternal life. The third fold is made in honor and remembrance of the veteran departing our ranks who gave a portion of life for the defense of our country to attain a peace throughout the world. The fourth fold represents our weaker nature, for as American citizens trusting in God, it is to Him we turn in times of peace as well as in times of war for His divine guidance. The fifth fold is a tribute to our country, for in the words of Stephen Decatur, quote, "Our country, in dealing with other countries, may she always be right, but it is still our country, right or wrong." The sixth fold is for where our hearts lie. It is with our heart that we pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The seventh fold is a tribute to our armed forces, for it is through the armed forces that we protect our country and our flag against all her enemies, whether they be found within or without the boundaries of our republic. The eighth fold is a tribute to the one who entered into the valley of the shadow of death, that we might see the light of day, and to honor Mother, for whom it flies on Mother's Day. The ninth fold is a tribute to womanhood, for it has been through their faith, love, loyalty, and devotion that the character of the men and women who have made this country great have been molded. The 10th fold is a tribute to Father, for he too has given his sons and daughters for the defense of our country since they were first born. The 11th fold, in the eyes of a Hebrew citizen, represents the lower portion of the seal of King David and King Solomon, and glorifies in their eyes the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The 12th fold, in the eyes of a Christian citizen, represents an emblem of eternity and glorifies in their eyes God the Father, the Son, and Holy Ghost. When the flag is completely folded, the stars are uppermost, reminding us of our national motto, "In God we trust." After the 13th fold and the flag is completely folded and tucked in, it takes on the appearance of a cocked hat, ever reminding us of the soldiers who served under General George Washington and the sailors and Marines who served under Captain John Paul Jones, who were followed by their comrades and shipmates in the armed forces of the United States, preserving for us the rights privileges, and freedoms we enjoy today. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you all learned a little something about the folding of the flag. Did anybody know anything about that before? Did you know there were actually folds that represented something? So that's what we're doing today, trying to teach you guys a little something about all these things that you see in and around you every day. And they have meanings and there's symbols behind each of it. So with that said, now I'm going to turn our attention to the individual veterans, let them speak in their own words as to their service in the military and what Veterans Day means to them. And also, if they'll also highlight anything that they are participating in here locally, either in Greene County or even Charlottesville and the surrounding areas. So with that, I'm going to first introduce in the order of your program. So if you look on the first person here, we have Captain Patrick Kelly, Navy, U.S. Navy retired.
Okay, first thing I want to say is when you get home this afternoon, go in the closest mirror and look in it, and the person you see is the person that's holding you back to keep you from accomplishing what you want to accomplish in your life. I enlisted in the United States Navy in September of 1965, and I hated the Navy. I couldn't stand it. I got out of it as soon as I could in 2004. So I have credit for 38 years, 9 months, and 27 days enlisted in commissioned service. Was a radioman. I typed and received and filed, routed teletype messages for a year, and then I got to go to Vietnam. Sort of a different environment. I was on a big green boat floating around the Mekong Delta. No air conditioning, lots of bugs. Went from Alaska, which had 4 seasons, to Vietnam, which had 2 seasons, hot and dry, or wet and wet. Monsoon season and dry season. And you got to deal with slapping mosquitoes all the time and eating sea rations and floating around on a boat. And oh, by the way, we're going to send you down to fight these people down in the Mekong Delta, but you can't open fire until they shoot at you first. So we did a year of that and came back home. Went to college, started looking for a job, couldn't find one. Went back to the Navy. They said, well, we can get you commissioned to Aviation Officer Candidate School. So I said, well, that sounds neat. So I went down to Pensacola, Florida to AOCS and spent 16 weeks in the Marine Corps. At Marine BIs, Marine Battalion officers, and we did basically Marine Corps boot camp for officer candidates. So Naval Aviation and I didn't get along well together, so I ended up driving ships, and I drove ships for the rest of my Navy career. So that is all I've got to say about the Navy. If any of you want to go into the service, I don't care which service, you will find that it's going to be the most, one of the most, if not the most important experiences of your life. You'll meet some wonderful people. You'll do some unique things. You'll do some boring things. You'll do some things where you say, why did I sign up for this? But in the end, what you will end up with is people trying to help you, advise you, move you along, and help you along with what you're trying to do in life. And of course, all veterans have a unique camaraderie. No matter what service you were in, you've been to basic, you've submitted yourself to military discipline, and you've served your country. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up will be my father, Colonel James O'Kelly, United States Marine Corps retired.
probably don't need this, but we'll use it anyway. So the United States Marine Corps has a long and distinguished history, and today is our 247th birthday. The interesting part about it is when I was talking to somebody about the possibility of going into service, the man told me, he said, look, you really got 5 choices. You can go in the Army and get it over with, or you can enjoy parts of the world they'll send you to. You can go in the Navy and you can see the world. You go in the Air Force and you can learn something. You can go into Coast Guard. In the old days you could stay home, but now they're all over the place doing the same thing as the Navy and chasing down people who are trying to sell drugs and get illicit drugs in this country. Or you go in the Marine Corps and you can brag about it the rest of your life. So that's what I ended up doing. So, and I think some people understand how that works. I came out of the mountains of North Carolina, west of Asheville, over near the Cherokee Indian Reservation. And I went to Duke University, and then later I went to graduate school, but primarily I came out of Duke with a civil engineering degree. So I went to work for IBM Corporation down in Hickory, North Carolina. And on 8 March 1965, the Marines landed in Da Nang. And I was single and didn't have anything I needed to be worried about, so I decided, I was reading a book by Ralph Waldo Emerson at the time. It was on self-reliance. And in one of the comments in there made me start thinking that I would rather in my lifetime regret what I did do rather than what I did not do. So taking that basic idea, I decided to join the Marine Corps the day after my 24th birthday. It was quite an experience. I'm not sure I was exactly ready for it. If you've played baseball, basketball, football, or been on any kind of a team, that's what I thought I was getting into, and I was to a certain degree, but not to the intensity level that I found myself in. Running up a hill, a place called the Hill Trail out near Quantico, almost like this, with a steel helmet on, and a guy with a swagger set beating you over the head as you're running up. It was not exactly what I thought the way they ought to be treating me, but that's the way it went. I left to go to Vietnam. Right before I did that, we had our 11-mile forced march, and I was carrying an M60 machine gun, and it was a really hot day, and I jumped over a tree, and I don't remember anything after that except when I woke up, I had a Marine under each arm, another guy had my machine gun, and they were pouring water on me. I said, "Oh, Kelly, you're slacking off. Pick the machine up and let's go." So we finished up and ran in. When I got to the bottom of the hill and they dismissed us, they said, "Go clean the guns, machine guns." So I'm over cleaning the gun, I look down at my feet and there's blood coming out of my boots. And I'm like, what in the world? So I thought, aha, I'll go over and I will see if I can go to the sick bay and get this thing figured out before I end up being a sick bay commando, what we used to call them. So I made the mistake of going over to the drill instructor. Sergeant instructor requests permission to speak. "What do you want, Private?" "Sir, my feet are bleeding. I request permission to go to sick bay." I'm trying to figure out how to clean this up for y'all, but apparently what he said to me in so many words was, if you're looking for sympathy, you can find it in the dictionary between defecation and syphilis. Oh, God, what is he talking about? What he was telling me is, young man, you get back and clean your gun and don't worry about your feet. Well, you'd think that's a pretty harsh lesson until the fact that I ended up in Vietnam at a place called Khe Sanh, and when we were surrounded by 40,000 NVA, and we were in trenches just like in World War II and World War I and all, and a lot of guys were coming down with trench foot. So that lesson reminded me that no matter what your problem is, your first mission is to stay out there, right there in contact with the enemy. You may not understand that at this point, but if you ever go in, you will. I guess Tara, my daughter, wanted me to somebody remembered some of the stories I told last year. One of the things that you never think about when you go to war, and I spent 3 years in Vietnam, you don't think about your contact with animals and reptiles and things of that nature. But I was leading patrols just about every night, and we go out into the jungle, but we'd always work at night because we really had control of the night that way. People say the VC had control of the night, but I think we did too. And later days, now that we have the night vision goggles and all, it's a much different thing. But on one particular patrol, we're out in a place called the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and we had settled down, and we were in this position, and we'd been traveling quite a bit, so I told everybody to take a break. And the main thing you want in a situation like that is to be as quiet as possible. Because if anybody hears you or anything, you know that you could be killed. So a couple of my Marines went over and decided they're going to sit down on a log and rest. So they did. And the log started moving. And it scared them so bad, one of them screamed. And it turned out it was a 30-some foot python that was laying in the woods. And it started taking off. We never saw the front of the python. We only saw the parts that were moving by. But of course, the screaming and yelling, a couple of guys did. I had to call back, say, we're coming in, that's it, we're done. Another time, we're on the trail, and we're monitoring these guys that are coming through. And a company of about 200 North Vietnamese moved by us about from here to where she is sitting. And we were what we were calling hidden. While they were passing by, and I'm sitting there, and I have my rifle in front of me, and I have my hands like this, and a cobra comes moving up, and this snake is about 12 feet long, and he comes up and he looks at me, and I'm like, oh crap. And then he starts moving across, and he moves right across my arms and moves out the other way. And I'm thinking, thank you, Lord. Glad he kept going. Because, you know, I could do nothing. Because if I had said anything, I've got those 200 guys going by, I'm done. So there are interesting opportunities you have in life to test your skills and your abilities. A place called Con Tien, we were out in the front doing we were doing reconning a minefield, and it was live minefield. And all of a sudden I heard this chai chai chai, dunk, dunk, dunk. Well, that was the North Vietnamese, and they decided to start dropping mortars in on us, and there was 3 of us. So I told the gunny and the gunner, I said, turn around and start walking out of the minefield. You don't run out of a minefield. As we started back, and they're dropping rounds all around us, a couple of the rounds actually got pretty close, but the first 2 guys got out, and they had me what we call bracketed on either side of me. So as I was trying to move out, a round hit in the front of me, and then another round hit behind me and blew me out of the minefield into the shell hole where the other round was. And that's, I think, where I got a great deal of religion, because I thank the Lord. If I had been blown into the minefield, I wouldn't be here talking to you today. So there are events like that you deal with in combat. You deal with contact with the enemy. You deal with animals. We had a guy drug off by a Bengal tiger. We have the North Vietnamese who are using elephants to transport their heavy equipment. All that kind of stuff. She wanted me to tell you some war stories and some things. I think a lot of you know what the Marine Corps is and what we do. USMC stands for Uncle Sam's Misguided Children. I think we're also called Marine. MARINE stands for Muscles Are Required, Intelligence Not Expected, but that's not true either, is it? In either case, I went back to school when I got out, and I got my master's and doctorate, so something worked there well too. I think to understand, we're kind of like the shock troops for the American forces. I'm almost through, yes ma'am. I'm getting the sign to get off. We're the shock troops. We kick in the doors, the Army comes in behind us, the Navy usually drops us on the ground, and the Air Force comes in and supports us. So that gives you a quick overview, and we'll go from there. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we're going to have Colonel Ken Wallenborn, also a doctor, and then we'll wrap up with Dr. Williams at the end. Thank you.
Stay close. My wife says I talk too much. So now, everybody get ready. This is what she signals when I'm talking too much. Let's practice. Everybody, you ready? Like this, come on. Okay, now, if I see 100% of you do that, I'll stop talking. Otherwise, we'll be here tomorrow night. Okay, I'm a former retired physician. My family has a long history of fighting for this country. 3 great-great-grandfathers fought in the Revolutionary War. One of them signed the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence. That's 1775 down in North Carolina. One of my great-great-grandfathers signed that. Then the other one was signed in Pennsylvania, signed the Articles of Confederation. That was our first constitution. It wasn't any good, but they later gave us a much better one. And the third was a cavalry officer, who worked under or fought under one of the Washington cousins. Now, my history, I was did World War II. I was a military bugler with the Virginia State Guard. We didn't have walkie-talkies, so we had our bugles. I was taught 47 bugle calls. Good Lord of mercy. And, so they had to know them too. I had to play them, but they had to understand them. But then in the service, I went to college and was in the ROTC, and when I graduated, they said, "You're going on active duty immediately." In one of the war areas, and I said, "But wait, I can go to med school. I'm accepted." So they let me go to med school, then they put me in the Air Force. Well, in the Air Force, that was home for me. I really enjoyed that. That was, when I was in the Air Force, that was in the war that we won, the Cold War. And I was in the Strategic Command, Air Command, and that's the platoon that dropped the atomic and hydrogen bombs if we needed to on Russia. And Russia knew that we could wipe them off the face of the earth. I mean, it was terrible if they didn't accept peace, and they did. While I was on duty there, I became a rated flight surgeon. I got to fly. I could fly in the co-pilot seat. The B-47, 6 engines. 6 engines, the wings, flew a 21-foot arc. But I had 2 near-death experiences in the B-47s and the Bermuda Triangle. You've probably heard of that. I gave a lecture course on that back in Charlottesville, and I nearly died in both of them. Now, you can see that I'm sort of hobbling around here. I didn't get a commendation for that. I didn't get a Purple Heart because I got that skiing out in Colorado. But at any rate, I had a great time as a pilot. I continued to fly. I flew in civilian life over 40 years and flew all over the country, the Bahamas and Canada and everywhere. And I loved it. And if you want to fly, join the Air Force. If you want to go into undersea and stay undersea for 2, 3, 4 months at a time and not know where you were and not know You folks don't know where you were, join the Navy. If you want to really fight and get beat up, join the Marines. Okay, well, that's about it. I had a wonderful time. I was a flight instructor, I was a aircraft accident investigator for the Air Force and for the FAA when I got out of service. And I had a great time in the Air Force. I recommend it. We had great planes, and we were going to win the war if it started. And the Russians knew that, and that's when they deteriorated. Thank you.
Okay. This gentleman here is very special. We've always looked up to him, so to speak. We've always looked up to him for a variety of reasons, but not least of all because he's the only one that we know that apparently actually knew some of the founding fathers. Unlike my colleagues here, I am not a veteran. I didn't get beyond Naval ROTC at the University of Virginia. And that's as close as I got to actually serving in uniform. I have, however, served our country in other capacities, especially overseas. Are you all French students? This is now mixed group, okay. Well, anyway, I've served a lot overseas and served the country. I've actually worked in 4 foreign languages. Strangely enough, Turkish is my very best language. But I have served, but not as these gentlemen have in uniform, and I hold them in the highest regard. Some people ask me about the uniform, and we had a governor about 10 years ago, Monticello, who thought I was obviously portraying George Washington, and he wanted a selfie or two taken by his staff, I should say, a picture taken and tweeted out to the electorate. And then at Monticello, we were part of the ceremony back in the days there. We were sitting off on the side in our Continental uniforms here, and he turned to the speaker, and he turned to the audience and he said, "Gee, I think this is extraordinary that we have General Washington here with us today. Don't you think he looks quite remarkable for his age?" So, in fact, I reenact my ancestor, who was a captain in the New York Continental Line, engineers and sappers. Interestingly enough, he was born French in Canada, in Quebec. And by the time he became of age, like most Frenchmen, any chance to fight the British was something that was of interest to him, and he sailed down the St. Lawrence. And the first time we find my ancestor is at Fort Ticonderoga in 1775, attached to the engineers and sappers of the New York Continental Line. So I can be George Washington if you need me to be, but my uniform is actually an authentic replication of his uniform as a captain. I think what I'd like to share with you today is, first of all, the two of us here are dressed in the uniform of America's first veterans, speaking of Veterans Day. And one of the things that I have discovered in my years of teaching and research and studying and looking back at my own education and talking to younger people all the way through college, frankly, into graduate school. I also teach at the graduate school level. I've discovered that American history and the American founding and the American Revolution in particular are taught with an America-centric focus. Not surprisingly, but we learn this history as though the American Revolutionary War was a war just between London and 13 colonies in North America. Well, to begin with, from the point of view of London, there were not 13, there were 26 colonies. And through my research and study over time, what I discovered is that America's war at that time became a global war, became literally an international global war. And what our students and most of the faculty don't realize is that our founding fathers knew most assuredly that we were part and engaged in an international and global war. What chance did America have against the greatest military of the time when the revolution broke out? The greatest army, far and away the finest navy in the world. After all, they had defeated all the rest of the European powers in the French and Indian War about 20 years earlier, and picked up ports and precious islands and rich islands and things all over the Caribbean, out to the Philippines and Manila, and all the way out to India. So when we started this war, America was actually in search of any friends it could find. And while students are taught this, our founding fathers were out, and the original Continental Congress were sending emissaries out to Europe, trying to find allies for our country. And in fact, they did. They found quite a few allies, quite a few countries that had been whipped up pretty badly by the British 20 some odd years earlier, looking to recover some of those territories and precious islands and ports that they had lost around the world. So in fact, it may come to you as some surprise. Of course, everybody tends to know that the French contributed significantly to the war, and we all know General Lafayette's name, and he's sort of synonymous. He's the symbol of the relationship between the American colonies and their war for independence and France. But the relationship with France in particular went deep and went wide. The French secretly supported the American war effort for about 2 years before they actually declared war against England and in support of our revolution in America. It was not until later in 1778 that the French officially joined the war, but unofficially, they were sending us highly skilled engineers in particular, and materiel, and the Navy was helping transport goods, which the British considered contraband, especially through the Caribbean, to America. Now, the French ended up investing an enormous amount of money in our independence. Over 5,000 soldiers and sailors died, another 9,000 or 10,000 casualties. They literally put in the equivalent today of about $20 billion into the rebel efforts in America. So their contributions were extraordinary. Their Navy was constantly engaging the British Navy, not just obviously in the Americas, but engaging them around the world. So battle sites that the French were involved in against the British range from Manila all, to the Caribbean, to Senegal in France, in Africa, all the way to both sides of India. Now imagine what this did to the British fleet, trying to embargo the American rebels, and their fleets being split up all over the world and being engaged by French ships. It made their blockade like a sieve. And our privateers and our early Navy were able to move material and money and weapons and cloth clothing, leather for boots and shoes almost at will a couple of years into the war. Their role is phenomenal, the French role in the contribution, not least of all in that final victory at Yorktown in 1781, last month, October 19th, with General Rochambeau, side by side with General Washington accepting the surrender of General Cornwallis. But it's not just France. And our members of the Continental Congress and individuals like George Washington, Jay, Hamilton, Mason, these guys were all dealing with contacts in Europe, and it wasn't long before the Dutch, who had also lost dearly in the previous war, the Dutch finally declared war against Britain, but even before they declared war, they helped finance us. They helped the American rebels raise money in Europe to help support the cause in America. The Spanish became significantly involved as well, particularly with money and gold, and they actually helped us manage in the Caribbean to keep the British off balance on the islands that they formerly had interest in, as the French were doing for the sugar islands that they formerly had interest in. But the Spanish actually helped us control the Mississippi. They were in control of New Orleans. Their headquarters in this part of the world was in Cuba at the time. And they helped us control the western side of America at that time. They actually sent soldiers as far north up the Mississippi as to St. Joe, Michigan, to attack British in their forts. Spanish were also of great significance to us. So it ends up that this is a global war for the British, all redounding to the benefit of the American rebels. And even Catherine the Great of Russia, General Washington referred to her as the great potentate of the North. Why would General Washington even know the Tsarina, Catherine? Clearly, the founders were busy trying to find support all across the world to fight the largest, most powerful country in the world, Great Britain, at the time. So even the Russians created something called the League of Armed Neutrality, which indirectly helped the American colonists. So what I'd like you to take away from my little contribution here today is to understand that the American Revolution was part of a global conflict. And it wasn't just the colonists dealing with London and Parliament and the other 13 colonies. It was a very large-scale war. Our founding fathers knew it. They took advantage of it. They exploited those old world European problems between the continental powers and England to the hilt. And in fact, to be perfectly honest, it is the French at the Second Treaty of Paris in 1783 who actually really went back to the Americans and told the British that you are not just surrendering. You're actually recognizing this new country, the United States of America. You're going to recognize their independence, and that territory will not just stop, won't just stop at the Alleghenies and the Appalachians. It continues all the way to Mississippi. The French insisted on that in the Treaty of Paris in 1783, helping us yet again establish the founding of our country. So this is what I wanted to share with you today. Being a professor, I could go on for way too long, but let me leave it there. It was one of the world's first global conflicts. Thank you all.
Okay, in our last minute, I just want to thank everybody for your time. I would like to recognize two, Staff Sergeant Joel Warren and as well as Chief Officer Warrant Chad Saylor. They're your local veterans here in Greene County. They spoke during 6th period. But please give them all another round of applause for their time. And with the bell ringing, you all are dismissed to the buses.